It's time for the second race of the weekend in the Euroformula Open Championship, and it's the first of our top 6 reverse grid races. We're in the Styrian Mountains of the Red Bull Ring, 4.36226 kilometers, I should say, and 10 turns for these youngsters to navigate on the road towards the FIA Formula 3 Championship on the F1 support bill. We already know of 2 drivers who are heading that way. Yevon David will be racing with AIX Racing, as will Fernando Barrichello. In fact, he's just wrapped up that weekend over in Monza, his debut, and we'll be back with them next year as well. But we keep our eyes focused on these final 3 meetings of the season here at the Red Bull Ring in Barcelona in 2 weeks' time, and then the finale in Monza, where it is still a 3-way fight in the championship between Yevon David, Michael Shin and Timit Kaharczyk. And Michael Shin managed to bridge the arrears to Timit Kaharczyk in the point standings with victory in race 1 yesterday. That, of course, means he goes from 6th on the grid in this one. We're welcoming the fans, old and new, potentially a future driver for the Euroformula grid in about 10 years' time, perhaps. But here and now, Yevon David, that car right there, the Sri Lankan line, will be starting on reverse grid pole. Very difficult race for him yesterday, was pushed out onto the gravel in the early stages of the race, rather hindered his progress. Of course, he'll be hoping to make up for that one. Timit Kaharczyk going from 4th on the grid as well. He has served his 3-place grid penalty for testing here 2 months ago with the BVM Racing squad. Therefore, no further penalties to have to be taken for the Polish driver. We've got a flurry of new drivers in for this weekend as well. We'll get into detail about all that lot shortly. But for now, it's Chris Stevens here in the commentary box alongside George Morgan.
Hello, Chris, and hello, everyone watching around the globe. We are back for some more action here at Red Bull Ring. And, of course, the championship fight takes another twist and turn, does it not? Obviously, as you alluded to, Chris, Michael Shin now jumping into 2nd spot in the championship. They were a point apart coming into the weekend. Yevon David ahead of Shin by a solitary point on 213. It was 212 for Michael Shin, but still a gap to find on Timit Kaharczyk, who obviously, as you so rightly said, did, of course, have to suffer the effects of a penalty. Obviously, only a 3-place drop, but still, on the face of it, was able to recapture at least 1 spot, move himself into the podium places. Wasn't able to get past this man, though, Jose Garfias, who also levied some strong points in his favour and could yet find himself bridging that gap to the top 3, as well as the rest of the season pans out. So what is currently a 3-car fight, you never know, could become a 4-car fight with the remaining races we still have to come. Of course, we do have Barcelona and Monza still to come throughout the course of the season. Also, we are in the final frontier now, fresh after the summer break. Now full view extends to the Temple of Speed, where, of course, a champion will be crowned. Of course, ultimately, still, at this stage, 8 races to bring you between now and the end of the season, so you don't want to miss a thing, and trust me, this race is going to be feisty.
Everett Stack, we just saw pulling into his grid slot. He's got a big day ahead, starting on the front row of the grid here, and also on reverse grid pole for race 3. That's the one taken from the qualifying order, but here is young Yevon on his way to Formula 3 next year, and so he really enjoys the fact that he can just put full focus now into completing his Euroformula campaign, not having to worry about next year. Everett Stack there, he had a bit of a misdemeanor in qualifying. He's got a bit more pace than his original grid position would suggest, and so from the front row of the grid, and we saw a sticker set of Pirelli tyres there, as there is here on Diego Della Torre, who absolutely bolted off the line yesterday. A lightning start from the Mexican that saw him lead into the first corner. It's not exactly the longest run to turn 1 either from pole position, only about 217 meters or so. And so you do well to make up at 2 places in that very short amount of time. Timit Kaharczyk going from 4th on the grid after working his way up to the podium yesterday. Great fights with both Diego Della Torre and Jose Garfias, the BVM driver in the lead of the championship, really sticking to the established, sticking it to the man, as Jack Black would say.
Yeah, frequenting the pole-on-pole phrase, which he's now thoroughly enjoying. Obviously, would have been on pole had it not been for the grid drop in our race 1 here at the weekend, but still a phenomenal record he owns at the moment. Michael Shin, though, this is our race winner from yesterday, and did it in dominant style, did he not? Cruising onwards, building a huge mammoth of a gap and able to solidify his place at the top of the rostrum. Ed Pearson, who was frustrated yesterday after some issues crept into his race. He had some fun with Everett Stack out on track and will be looking to try and recover. Of course, finishing outside that top 6 means that he does not benefit from the reverse situation that, of course, we do have this weekend. Venezuelan Alessandro Famolaro is in good company this weekend because Enzo Fittipaldi is in the paddock along with him and offering his support as well at the same time. A big opportunity for young Famolaro to bring his best. A familiar looking livery because this is Fernando Barrichello's, who's racing at Monza this weekend in FIA Formula 3. Well, Luca Viscerano steps up from Romania in the seat and will be starting P9 just ahead of Francisco Soldavini, the Argentinian for Nielsen Racing. Of course, Nielsen Racing, new team this campaign, so getting the opportunity to try and test some new drivers on the grid. Of course, Soldavini has had some prior single-seater racing experience and lots of it, much like various other new drivers that have come into the fold. And a big warm welcome to Paolo Brajnik again, the Gold Cup driver, returning to the grid this time for NV Racing, gentleman driver in his of course, in this classification. And then at the very back of the grid, Ricardo Baptista, who's not the Ricardo Baptista that is the sports car driver that you've come to know. Instead, it's a relation. In fact, Cardi Baptista, we like to call him, and he likes to be called as well. Nielsen Racing is where he sits, and he'll be taking the start from the back of the grid.
Yeah, Baptista's son, Baptista Jr. Go through what happened yesterday. Michael Shin starting on pole position alongside Yevon David, but that lightning start from Diego De La Torre from the second row of the grid saw the Mexican have the whole shot into the first corner. Shin and David went toe-to-toe. Timik Kaharczyk was up on the inside. Jose Garfias getting a bumpy ride across the curbing. They rose up the hill towards the turn 3 hairpin with Diego De La Torre leading the way ahead of Michael Shin, Yevon David. And then it all went wrong, sadly, with De La Torre making this mistake on the exit of turn number 4. Yevon David also getting pushed out into the gravel. That allowed Shin and Garfias to go through into first and second. Timik Kaharczyk and Diego De La Torre went wheel to wheel for the last spot on the podium. De La Torre eventually yielding that spot with this mistake into the final couple of corners. And the Polish driver recovering from that 3-place grid penalty that he picked up for testing here 2 months ago with the BVM squad. But out in front, Michael Shin unperturbed at the front of the field, 6 seconds to the good in the end, and he picked up his 3rd victory of the season. That means he now takes 2nd place in the Drivers' Championship and just 8 points behind Timik Kaharczyk. Now, Yevon David, now 25 points back from the championship leader, Jose Garfias, closing in slightly and keeping his hat in the ring for the title going into these final 3 meetings of the season. Race 2 at the Red Bull Ring about to get underway. Here's how they line up. Yevon David on reverse grid pole ahead of Everett Stack. Diego De La Torre starts 3rd, and then it's the BVM Racing driver of Timik Kaharczyk starting on the 2nd row of the grid. Behind them comes Jose Garfias and yesterday's race winner, Michael Shin, not benefiting from the reverse grid, though. Ed Pearson, he's been a little frustrated this weekend. He goes from 7th ahead of Alessandro Famolaro, one of several rookies we have on the grid here this weekend. Behind them, Luca Viscerano in Fernando Barrichello's car, Francisco Soldavini for Nielsen Racing with Paolo Brajnik in 11th, and then after crashing in yesterday's race at the final corner, Cardi Baptista starts at the back of the grid. George, there's plenty of permutation stuff to worry about in this one. Of course, Yevon David trying to fight back a little bit, close that 25-point deficit, but you know that Michael Shin and Timik Kaharczyk are going to be making progress. In terms of tyres, things should be fairly even Steven, so we shouldn't have to worry about that.
No, not at all. I think everyone's pretty much on an equal footing coming into this race, which makes it all the more spicy. I want to say, though, Jose Garfias strikes me as one of the more interesting characters inside this top 6 because now he has vaulted himself into this championship scrap, as we just saw illustrated from our championship graphic coming out of the replays from yesterday. Obviously, I'm keen to see how he reacts this time around. He knows this Red Bull circuit very well indeed. He is looking to put himself on the market for a future Indy seat potentially, or maybe even moving into the LMP competition, and obviously needs to impress over the course of the next few races to really put his name up in lights. Obviously, in his interest, it will be to beat Michael Shin, also beating Yevon David, of course, various others. He needs to ideally win a race this weekend. So I'm very keen to see how Jose Garfias gets on. I think Michael Shin is going to come like a train. In all honesty, though, I can't see past Timek Kaharczyk for this one either. If he gets the launch that he would be looking for off the line, of course, he's starting from the same place pretty much as he did yesterday. Obviously, P4 on the grid. He's going to be looking for a hefty launch to challenge Yevon David. Remember, Timek Kaharczyk does hold the lead of the championship, but it's only 8 points now. Michael Shin not far away.
In a similar vein, though, Diego Della Torre is also starting in the same position he started yesterday.
And look at what happened to him.
And he led into the first corner. So he'll be looking to recreate that start for sure. As the drivers make their way around this circuit on the formation lap, we'll be working quite hard to generate some temperature in those Pirelli tyres, I'd have thought. Only 13 degrees ambient temperature out there on what is not a frosty morning, but certainly not a warm morning here in the Styrian Mountains. A lot cooler than yesterday. Track temperature only 17 degrees. And we see even in qualifying, they take a couple of laps to really get the best out of these Pirelli tyres, which is a softer compound compared to last year, but still needing quite a bit of energy to bring them into that optimal window. And you'll see they'll be, I think, weaving all the way to their grid slots and doing the prescribed number of burnouts, of course. It may well be 3 motorpark cars up at the front of the field, but the inter-team battle is as fascinating as ever, with BVM Racing really sticking it to the very established Oschersleben-based outfit, leading the championship, of course, and the arrival of Nielsen Racing making it all the more interesting. All 3 of those teams have won races so far this year. Of course, it was back in Portimao where Nielsen and Ed Pearson took a rather astonishing debut victory. So we'll be keeping an eye out on their progress. Of course, it's been a very steep learning curve for them, but nonetheless, learning at a very rapid rate. Busy few weeks for them coming up, actually. They're here this weekend. They're racing at Silverstone in the European Le Mans Series, of course, which is where they are primarily known for. And then we race in Barcelona for the Euroformula again in 2 weeks' time. So here, there, and everywhere for the Nielsen squad, as that is Francisco Soldavini, just pulling into his grid slot. He's got our onboard camera for this weekend, so hopefully we'll be getting some good shots from on board his car. Kaji Baptista, the last car to pull into position. And we get the green flag waved at the back of the grid. The red lights come on, the engine notes rise. We're racing for the second time this weekend. Great launch for Yevon David. Everett Stack got away reasonably well, but not enough to challenge, I don't think. In fact, it's Timek Kaharczyk, the aggressor, and round the outside of the first corner to take second place away from Everett Stack there. Great stuff. Garfias having to take to the escape road as Michael Shin looks to pounce on that as well. The green trimmed car, the championship protagonist, trying to make up a couple of places from the opening corners here as Kaharczyk has to defend against Everett Stack to the inside at turn number 3, and the American trying to take that place back. And on the exit of the corner, I think he has managed to do so. Hasn't quite been able to chop the nose of the BVM car just yet. Now he does so, and now challenges for the lead against Yevon David, another championship protagonist, but he breaks very, very late into turn number 4. That hasn't stopped Stack giving it a go, but he knows he's going to get run out of road there.
Yeah, Michael Sheen also getting past Jose Garfias, and now launches himself into this top 4 tirade. Now this time around, as now once again Timek Kaharczyk is now certainly led astray coming through Rochenwerth curve by Everett Stack, who dips his toes into the gravel at the same time. But it's Yevon David who leads the way, looking to certainly end this race in a more positive light than he did yesterday. Several trips into the gravel trap certainly didn't help his cause. This time around, though, he's in front and has the clean air, with Stack in behind, who defended really well. Yet in yesterday's race 2, he's going to have his best defensive helmet on again for this race 2 effort. Timek Kaharczyk now once again manacled together with Michael Shin. I tell you what, if Michael Shin could put points on Kaharczyk here, we could yet see a change-up for the championship lead.
Could well do, because he's got to get around his championship rival. Oh, that was a big bounce over the curb for Yevon David, and Stack himself was sliding the rear end of that motorpark car through the first corner. And that is going to be a great incentive for Timek Kaharczyk as we slipstream our way up the hill. Super late braking zone into this almost hairpin corner. And Stack was having to defend a little bit, darted over to the right-hand side, just to ward off Kaharczyk. You're not coming through there, sunshine. And again, getting his elbows out here as he hugs the right-hand side of the racetrack. And the following each other in the wheel tracks there, basically. That was almost close to 2 defensive moves. And Kahacek's exit out of turn 4 has been very heavily compromised there, and Michael Shin tries to take advantage of that. The South Korean looking around the outside, but no way through there. Of course, he's got to be careful because Garfias will pounce on him if either of them get compromised.
Yeah, obviously the moving obstacle at that point was, of course, Everett Stack. He just popped himself right on the apex, right where, really, Kahacek needed to be, and as an effect, lost a lot of momentum coming out of Slosh Gold as a whole, and allowing Michael Shin to potentially send something around the outside or either the inside, whichever way he fancied. Obviously, Kahacek had it well measured coming through Roshenworth curve, thankfully for him. But as they now make their way across the line once again, 2 laps completed now with Yevon David still out in front, noticing a gap now that is stretched to over a second because Stack more concerned about defending against the pole in behind, who is certainly shown to be rapid based on the 1 lap pace we have seen. But in this case, fastest lap in the pocket of Yevon David as now the Pirelli tyres begin to get acclimatised to this Red Bull Ring circuit. Here comes Kahacek again, flailing around inside the aero of Everett Stack as now they go wheel to wheel again on the apex of the corner at Remus. No avenue for the overtake just yet. Kahacek forced to remain behind, but will have a nice run on offer here down through towards Slosh Gold. He doesn't ideally want to take the outside line because, again, it may leave him compromised to Michael Shin just in behind, who's just literally watching every move that he makes, and again, parking it on the apex, trying to stop Kahacek from making that move, and Michael Shin had to take evasive action there.
Yeah, he was arriving with some speed in there, wasn't he? And amazingly, they're in the same order as they went into the corner with. So still Everett Stack holding up this defensive second place, having to avoid that gravel that's been brought onto the circuit, presumably by a previous session in the middle of turns 6 and 7. Which is just an extra thing they have to think about in this race. Obviously, this is great news for Yevon David, who did the fastest lap of the race last time around, and will continue to build the gap while Everett Stack has his mirrors full of championship protagonists. And yes, the gap now 1.7 seconds near enough as they cross the beam to start lap number 4. Stack pops up over the top of the hill. Those 3 cars absolutely line of style. Garfias and De La Torre, the 2 Mexican drivers, waiting in the wheel tracks there. Ed Pearson hanging on to this train of cars as well, only 0.8 of a second behind De La Torre. And trying to show his nose for Nielsen Racing there as well was again Kahacek had a look to the inside, really struggled to get around Diego De La Torre yesterday. Giuseppe Mazzotti watching his man in the podium fight. He really struggled to get around both De La Torre and Garfias. In fact, the latter he never did get around in race 1 yesterday. No contact between the Luca Visceranu car and Kaji Baptista down at turn number 3. So yellow flags are waving down there. It is the Brazilian and the Venezuelan who have come together. Oh, sorry, the Romanian, I should say, that have come together. And hopefully they can both continue on. We won't need a safety car intervention. You see Kahacek's fallen off the back of Stack somewhere on this lap. See if he can gather that back up. We do have a safety car because the yellows are still waving down there. So it's the start of lap number 5 and we're under safety car procedure.
Bad news for Yevon David because it means the gap that he had built at 1.7 seconds is now going to go. This is the replay of the move. So Paolo Brajnik was also, I think, involved in this as well in the 2-1-2 and just a tap of the rear. And rear, I wonder if that was a slight bit of rear suspension damage we just saw there because it just seemed to elevate.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, but there you go. Yeah,
completely popped it off the Nielsen car there of Kaji Baptista. So, yeah, that's why that car is still stricken there. I can only assume because it won't be able to get that going at all. Potentially Visceranu has been able to continue around the lap. Yes, he has. So it is just the stricken Nielsen car that we have to remove. Difficult debut for Baptista, unfortunately. Of course, a crash yesterday and then contact today, ending his race early. Under the guidance of Sergio Sette Camara is Baptista. And of course, Sette Camara racing for the Nielsen squad in LMP2 machinery in the European Le Mans series. You see damage to the front right there as well, I think. I wonder if
tired, doesn't it?
I wonder if he caught Brajnik's car there as well. Luca Visceranu has come into pit lane meanwhile, presumably for a front wing change. or potentially a tyre change as well if he managed to puncture one of those. Of course, it's a 30-minute time limit in these races. And usually, if we spend too much time at the safety car, it ends up going down to time rather than to laps. We'll take a look inside the Nielsen garage. Got a good look there of Paul Thomas, one of their more infamous engineers. He's worked with Toyota and Glickenhaus. Originally joined Nielsen for the LMP2 program, but also giving his expertise on their debut campaign in single-seater racing. As we see the extraction of the number 27 Nielsen machine down at turn 3. Good opportunity to thank the marshals for their work, because of course without them we cannot go racing. And thankfully we haven't needed to have too much intervention from them. I know there was a bit of a nasty incident in the TCR race yesterday, but beyond that, it's all been relatively smooth sailing at this Red Bull Ring weekend. That incident between Visharanu and Baptista, no surprise, under investigation. Yeah,
obviously the stewards will have their say on that matter, and yes, obviously a big appreciation to the marshals who work so hard here. Of course, Red Bull Ring, it's a beautiful circuit to come to, and it really does well to maintain the aesthetic. We get a lovely panoramic view of the mountains that are, of course, peaking just above the top of the racetrack as they make their way through Remus Corner, as we're seeing now. And it's an absolutely formidable backdrop, you know, to certainly witness. And, of course, we've got the iconic bull statue in the centre of the circuit as well. It is literally centred right in the middle, in the heart of the Styrian Mountains, which is certainly phenomenal to see, hence the Red Bull Ring terminology. And we watch them come down through towards Sloshgold once again. It's had a storied history, this circuit, of course, originally known as the Oostenrijk Ring, eventually renamed the A1 Ring. Has had a closure, a reopening after opening back in 1969, of course, in the 26th of July. It was 2004 where it was then shut. We then saw a reopening back on the 15th of May 2011 here in Spielberg, and since then, of course, has taken pride of place as the home of the Austrian Grand Prix, pretty much. And, of course, many of these drivers looking to races such as that to raise their own stakes in their career, taking inspiration from great drivers. Of course, Yevon David certainly does, that's for sure, much like every driver does when they grow up watching motorsport, and they'll look to bring their very best, especially now as the safety car is in this lap.
Yep, Yevon David slowing the pack down. He takes over control of the field. He's still working really hard to get that temperature into the Pirelli rubber. Just goes to show how much they are struggling for it out there. Reminder, just 17 degrees track temperature. What is about 10 to 11 in the morning here. So I feel like it's not going to get much warmer than this throughout the day. Doesn't bode well for race 3 later on as well. But Yevon David has pulled the pin and has put about a 3/4 of a second, maybe a full second between himself and Everett Stack on this safety car restart. So wonderful, wonderful restart there for Yevon David. He's well clear when they get to the timing line. Let's see what the gap is. It's about 9/10 of a second, and it's Timo Gahacek, potentially the aggressor, with Michael Shin close behind, Garfias and Della Torre, and Pearson. Alessandro Familaro chasing his rival there of Ed Pearson, and on board here with Francisco Soldevini as we rise up the hill. We'll see how late on the brakes he can be as they build up to 234 kilometers an hour at the speed trap, braking down to just second gear. And back on the gas again, but a potential change for third place here with the top 2 in the championship going toe-to-toe here. Michael Shin very late on the brakes, a bit too late on the brakes as he locks up the tyre, and that allows Gahacek to go straight back through. And now he's under pressure from Jose Garfias. They head towards turn 6. The Mexican looks towards the inside, but Michael Shin carrying that speed the long way round that left-hander and just about managed to defend him off. Well, very nearly. Garfias still having a look on the inside into 7. Shin just about manages to keep him at bay.
And how much has that lockup compromised those tyres as well coming through towards Sloshgold, because he had to put on the anchors, and obviously we saw that illustrated from the tyre smoke. Now Garfias could be handed an olive branch. Here's a move inside the top 4, and Gahacek some respite as he looks to try and challenge Everett Stack. He doesn't really want to see Yevon David move away as quickly as he did before, because there is still an opportunity here for the race win if he can apply himself and get past Stack at this point in time. Obviously, Kaharczyk more concerned about levying the points in his favour to increase his gap at the top of the championship. At the moment, it is Michael Shin who sits in second place. Remember, they came in a point apart, did Yevon David and Michael Shin. Now roles are reversed with Shin a thoroughfare of points ahead now of David, who's now in third, as now we see some wheel-to-wheel action further back. Once again, we're seeing Diego Della Torre and Ed Pearson now dueling it out as they come out of turn 3 at Remus Corner. Very well showed there from Diego Della Torre to maintain his place in P6, but Pearson now with the run coming down through towards Slosh Goal. Will he leave it late on the brakes? Diego Della Torre positioning his car right into the centre of the track, maintaining the place now in P6 and will hold it, as now we see a little bit of look from Viscerano on Soldovini.
And Viscerano will have 10 seconds added to his race time after being deemed to have caused the contact that ended Kaji Baptista's race. Running in 10th position at the moment is Viscerano, chasing Francesco Soldovini. So through these very fast final couple of quarters, it's got to be one of the best places in the world to watch a single-seater car in action, particularly one as high performance as these Euroformula Open cars.
Especially the view for the fans in the grandstands that we have here too. You can see everything up to turn 3 at Remus.
There's not a bad view at this circuit, really, is there? Because even if it's not so much racetrack, it's just beautiful mountains and forests and all the greenery to enjoy. Podium battle re-engaged with Kaharczyk having fended off the advances of Michael Shin last time around. He can firmly set his sights on taking second place away from Everett Stack. Of course, both Kaharczyk and Shin losing points to Yevon David. It's all going his way at the moment, trying to close that 25-point deficit to Kaharczyk in the championship, but it was Kaharczyk who was the fastest driver last time around, at 1:24.557 from the Polish driver, and so he is very much closing. Of course, he's had a slipstream from Everett Stack, which is quite potent around here. I don't know whether it fully reimburses you for the aero loss in the corners, but still a benefit.
We just saw a brief confirmation error, obviously alluding to your point earlier, Chris. Luca Viscerano obviously taking the 10-second time penalty. That's what popped up on your screen, folks. I think we're going to get a very different Timo Kaharczyk now for the remainder of this race. He's got to go for broke if he wants to challenge for this race win on Yevon David. The gap now has sprung out to 1.3 seconds. He doesn't really want him getting away. The problem is now we're coming into the final 8 laps of this race now. And of course, I'll show you the final 11 laps of this race. 8 laps applied, but now 9 laps completed. It's a reduced window, really, for Timo Kaharczyk to now close the gap on Yevon David. So it's now or never, really. And it looks like Michael Shin has also somewhat recovered after the lockup earlier on when he tried to challenge Kaharczyk on the run down through towards Slosh Goal at turn 4. It is still Everett Stack still holding on to second place. To Kaharczyk now having a little look to the inside as well, just firing the odd warning shot, trying to force Everett Stack to respond or make a mistake as they now come through over the crest and take the back straight through the highest point on the course before descending back down through the Styrian Mountains. Michael Shin creeping a little bit closer. Also keep your eyes peeled on Jose Garfias, just watching it all unfold. Another look for you from Michael Shin as he looks to try and tussle it out with Timo Kaharczyk over third place. Remember, the last podium spot on offer. And of course, Shin will be looking to try and levy himself closer to Kaharczyk, but at the moment, the gap will only increase between championships P1 and P2, though Yevon David could yet reposition himself back into second in this championship affair.
So 10 laps to go when they cross the stripe. Yevon David re-establishing the gap he had before the safety car came out. It's already in the region of 1.7 seconds, roughly where it was before we had the intervention. So he's done a very quick job of re-establishing his lead. Everett Stack soaking up the pressure very nicely here. Has to defend a little bit into the first corner, though. That's very much going to compromise him on the exit, I'd have thought. And so Kaharczyk should have an excellent run up the hill towards turn 3, big braking zone, and the fastest point on the racetrack as well. Everett Stack, the American driver, hugging the inside of the racetrack as Kaharczyk pulls to the outside line. Will he try and go all the way around the outside? No, Stack shuts that door. Is that going to open it for Michael Shin, though, I wonder? But Kaharczyk still absolutely soaking up the toe. And again, hugging the inside of the racetrack. Now, who's going to be bravest on the brakes here in the battle for second place? Oh, Garge with a big lock up on the outside. Locked up both fronts in the end and loses position to Michael Shin, who goes through into third.
Yeah, he gambled, didn't he? I must say, I think he made a mistake lingering behind Everett Stack too long on the run-up through towards turn 3. Should have probably opted for the cleaner air, and it would have given him probably a better exit than he did have, and therefore keeping Michael Shin behind. Shin was always pressurising Kahacik on the run-up through towards turn 3, and later he pounced at turn 4 and skipped into the gravel there further back as well. I think that was Diego Della Torre who went through there. This is the moment again, a lock-up heading through towards Slosh Gold, compromising Timek Kahacik's exit. He was very lucky not to lose out to Jose Garfias, and here's the response inside the Motor Park garage. Obviously, you know, delighted, I would imagine, that Michael Shin has made his way through past Kahacik at this stage, but it looks like now Shin is going to become the aggressor on his own teammate Everett Stack this time as they fly up through towards turn 1, and he's almost pushing Stack through the first corner as they now look to take the climb up through towards turn 3. Yevon David still out in front, just taking some of that blue paint on the inside. Stack now taking the same line as well as they fly uphill. Is Michael Shin going to immediately pull the plug on this Everett Stack P2 affair? Is he going to take the fight to him? Draw swords now as they come through turn 3. Not quite this time, but he might get the run down through towards turn 4 as well. Embracing the slipstream as they go nose to tail. The gap thinner than a fly's eyelash. Here comes now Michael Shin looking to the inside. Will he automatically plumb for the outside? Yes, he will. Wheel to wheel now as they come in towards Slosh Gold. Will he go for the up and under on the repeat as they come in towards Firth and Roche Curve? Everett Stack showing his best defensive efforts once again, but they're going to go wheel to wheel. Coming through Roche and Firth. Everett Stack once again defensive, fending off Michael Shin, holding that inside line, and that kept him at bay for now.
Great defensive driving from young Stack, who is expecting to stick around in the Euroformula Open Championship for a second campaign in 2026. Of course, would no longer be fighting for the rookie trophy. It's his first year of F3 level competition, having competed in Italian and UAE F4 last year. And coming on very nicely is the 18-year-old Virginian, but he's got quite a bit of pressure as Shin manages to get on the inside into the first corner, and Stack was never going to be able to keep that on the racetrack, and so Shin goes through into second place now and puts more points in the bag that he's getting over Timek Kahacik, but Stack will try and take this one back going into turn 3. He's been super defensive, now he's got to be the aggressor, and he doesn't quite manage to get the move done into 3. So it's Stack and Kahacik line astern once again, but Shin's going to have to keep an ear out for Stack as they head back down towards turn 4. Has to duck back into the slipstream, does Stack, and, well, Stack's got a car either side of him effectively going into the braking zone, but still sticks there in third position with Kahacik getting a slightly better run out of the corner. Can he do anything with that? No, Stack's got that one covered.
Yeah, certainly does. Obviously, again, having to apply defence against Kahacik this time around. Only this occasion, it was Michael Shin who was embracing the mightily defensive line in towards turn 4 at Slosh Gold. But the race now really starting to heat up, and Everett Stack, the man from the United States, certainly giving a grand account of himself. Obviously showed the same defensive fortitude yesterday, and that remains today once again. Diego Della Torre, with all his fighting, has now been unable to close up. This was the moment again where they met through turn 1. It was almost that Michael Shin had to almost apply the unorthodox to make this happen, and you can just see the response in the Motor Park garage. Probably risked perhaps a little bit too much, you know, really than was necessary. But I think from Michael Shin's standpoint, he was obviously fed up with attempting moves at turn 3 and turn 4, maybe almost saying, listen, I've got the run at turn 1. If I try something at Nicky down a curve, I'm not sure Everett Stack is going to be prepared to defend it.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not too happy with aggressive infighting like that at Motor Park.
Not good for international, well, political relations inside the team, I suppose.
Well, Michael Shin already pulling away. He's pulled 0.8 of a second since being able to clear Everett Stack, and so the question is, can he hang on to the podium now with Kahacik and Garfias in very close proximity with 6.5 laps remaining? The win for Michael Shin seems a bit out of reach, with 5.7 seconds the advantage for Yevon David, who did another fastest lap of the race last time around there as well. Remember, that is a crucial bonus point in each of these races as well. They are all critical because it means he's going to be taking 8 points out of Michael Shin rather than 7, which should give him second place in the championship back, I think. We'll get confirmation at the end of the race. And of course for Kahacek, his lead will be rather significantly eaten into as well. 6 laps to go then. Battle for the podium is on with the youngster Everett Stack trying to hang on to this place against the championship leader, and Jose Garfias waiting in the wings there as well. The BVM racing driver in a motor park sandwich, as he kind of has been all race really, taking the fight to the established team. And again, Stack defending to the inside at turn number 3. Kahacek to the outside, tries the up and under. But it's so hard to do there because of the camber and the way the corner is laid out. You almost even want to try going all the way around the outside, but that can often end pretty badly as well. Right, soaking up the slipstream again. Stack's probably spent more time on the inside of that braking zone than he has actually on the racing line in this race. And Garfias actually managed to draw alongside Kahacek while he was trying to make an attempt on Stack. That didn't quite work out for him, but Garfias now trying to go all the way around the outside for 4th position. This wasn't in the script, and ends up taking a little bit of gravel in trying to do so as well, so that didn't quite pay off for him, but I like the ambition.
Gallant effort from Jose Garfias, I must say. Trying it around the outside, coming through Rochenwerth curve. It was certainly ballsy, but it wasn't effective. It obviously ended up in the gravel trap, but at the end of the day, you've got to try it from time to time in order to make a difference. Has been sat in the status quo for quite some time now, obviously in 5th place. Further up, though, Kahacek still remaining half a second behind Everett Stack. The gap between Stack and Shin now is expanded to 2.5 seconds, and Yevon David is now very much clear up the road. Obviously, if you take into account Michael Shin's gap as well as Stack's, I mean, you're talking 8.6 seconds up the road, and still with the fastest lap of the race. Yevon David driving an absolute clinic here from the front of the grid and confirming himself surely in the next 5 laps as a race winner here at Red Bull Ring here in 2025. As they come through out of turn 3, and as they now fly down through towards the heavy braking zone at Stoshgold once again. Once more, we'll see Everett Stack. We'll predict that we'll see him close up to the inside. Timmy Kahacek just sat in behind also. Garfias now starting to drop off ever so slightly with Diego de la Torre down in 6.
5-second time penalty has gone to Everett Stack, though, for track limits infringements. Also to Francisco Soldevini. That'll have less of an impact because he's 11 seconds ahead of the next car. But the 3rd place driver, Everett Stack, with a 5-second time penalty. So that would drop him down to about 7th position if it were to end now. So that's really going to compromise him.
It's good news for Kahacek as well, because it minimises the damage that's essentially done as well, because he'll inherit P3 as a result of this, and he'll put him on the podium, and also at the same time reduces the advantage that Yevon David and Michael Shin would have in closing the gap to him at the top of the championship. There is Yevon David, the Sri Lankan Lion, who has really inspired many in his home nation and continues to do so. Of course, confirmed a driver in the FIA Formula 3 Championship for next season. We look forward to seeing him in action as well, along with the likes of Fernando Barrichello. And of course, all eyes on Timmy Kahacek as to what he plans to do for next season. Also, as they now look to climb uphill through towards turn 3. Kahacek now right on the rear of Everett Stack. Whilst, of course, Stack does have the penalty, may not have to go for this move. He's going to try and do it anyway to solidify his presence into P3. Kahacek now ahead as they cross the sector stripe, coming through towards turn 3 at Remus now. He might get the up and under. He will get the run, I'm sure. Plenty of momentum still in Kahacek's favour, and he might be able to now move alongside to challenge Everett Stack. Looks to behind. Very wary of Jose Garfias now as they storm down through towards turn 4 again. Is he going to try and go around the outside once again? Certainly Garfias is going to try it. He's now going to cut to the inside immediately, just finding the rotation on that front nose cone to drift back to the inside, but did not quite have the run, did Garfias, to strike an in position on Kahacek. They remain as they were in 3rd, 4th and 5th. That result will be updated. Kahacek back in 4th.
If you're wondering why, if Kahacek is going to inherit the podium anyway, why is he still attacking him so aggressively? You just got a visual representation of that because Garfias will pounce on him.
Of course.
So he needs to protect what will be a podium spot and really have to fight for it anyway. So he's just got to keep Garfias at bay. And if anything, Garfias looks like the aggressor at the moment. It's 3 laps to go. in this first reverse grid race of the weekend for the Euroformula Open Championship at the Red Bull Ring. Yevon David leads very comfortably by 5.8 seconds. Michael Shin has worked his way up to second place from 6th position on the grid, having won yesterday. The question is, who is going to be joining them on the podium? We know it probably won't be Everett Stack because of that 5-second time penalty he's picked up for track limits. Will it be the championship leader, or can Garfias muscle his way through? As this was a big moment for our race leader.
Rear end stepping
turn
out.
one.
Yeah, obviously this can happen around the Niki Lauda curve as now we rejoin the action up at the front end, and Garfias once again trying to make a Harchick. I would imagine he's been saving those tyres to the very last minute. Garfias now showing exactly what he can do on the Pirelli rubber as he now has a majority of his car in front of Kaharchik's BVM. Back comes Kaharchik, straight back through, and will retain that P4, but a nervous moment for the pole as Garfias had his number for a split second on the exit of turn 4.
Oh, that was great stuff again. I really thought Garfias had him there on that one. I wonder if that gravel that's on the in between turns 6 and 7 is not helping, because normally you'd be utilising all that track space as well. It's probably making a move at turn 6 even harder. So here we go. Great dart to the inside from Garfias, because he knows that Kaharchik is just going to open up the door for him, and he just got it a little bit wrong on the exit of the corner, did the Polish driver, and Garfias was fully ahead of him at that point. But it was a big, brave move from Kaharchik to stuff it back down the inside. And Motorpark thought they had it for a moment there, but not quite. A few more opportunities left for Garfias, though, with 2 laps remaining. And whoa, big dart to the inside, locks up his brakes. That was aggressive stuff, and it didn't work.
It didn't work at all. Obviously, this is Garfias essentially trying to break the mold. Essentially, we saw Horia Totu inside the Motorpark garage, who's been certainly a grand asset to many of these drivers in helping them move forward in their careers as well. Here comes Garfias again. He's just looking everywhere which way, looking to try and surpass Timo Kaharchik, and he might get his chance again this time, because he's once again alongside the BVM car, and Jose Garfias smelling blood once again around the outside, and Kaharchik buries him away once again, and in that mere moment alone, Stack has now careered onwards by 9/10 of a second now ahead of Kaharchik on this very lap.
Yeah, he probably won't pull the 5 that he needs in the remaining lap and 2 corners, but of course it probably does actually make life a little bit easier for Kaharchik, because all these doors are being opened for Garfias when he's trying to overtake Stack. So let's see what happens on the final lap of the race, which has now commenced. Yevon David 5.4 clear of Michael Shin, who has closed down that gap a little bit, but of course nothing will be doing there in terms of...
Bit too much to do.
Yeah, in terms of the amount of time we have left. And look, we are getting the full complement of 20 laps despite the safety car intervention, which is great news. So we know that Everett Stack can't finish on the podium, but can Garfias get in there with Kaharchik? And Kaharchik's had to take a slightly wider line through turn 3 there. There's our race leader, Yevon David, on course for yet another victory this season. It would be his 5th in 2025, and has absolutely dominated proceedings throughout this race. So the Sri Lankan line already on his way to FIA Formula 3 next year. Here is that battle for the podium, with Garfias trying to get around the outside on Kaharchik, and he can't find his way through. That was probably the last opportunity for him. Meanwhile, Yevon David from reverse grid pole making up for the disappointment of yesterday, and it is a 5th victory of the season for Yevon David in the Euroformula Open Championship. A sterling display out there, and he closes up on Timo Kaharchik in the championship, as well as Michael Shin, who does claim 2nd place. Everett Stack will be 3rd across the line, but on corrected times with that 5-second penalty for track limits infringements. It will be Timo Kaharchik back on the podium for the 2nd time this weekend.
Phenomenal result for Yevon David, and would you believe, his first win since Hockenheim Race 3, everybody. We've gone through 2 rounds where he has gone winless, hence why certainly his standing in the championship has certainly figured the way it has, but still he has landed podiums in that period of time, but he's been trying to chase that elusive P1 back again. It was such a strong start to his campaign where he was in control of the season's championship, but now at the very vital stage where the championship will be decided over the course of the next 3 rounds, He is now very much back in the pound seats and on the top step in what can only be described as a perfect result heading into our next reverse race that we have coming up later on this afternoon. The Sri Lankan Lion roars again, Chris, here at the end of race 2.
Yevon David takes a 5th victory of the season, 5.1 clear in the end of Michael Shin and Timit Kaharchek completing the podium. Our top 3 in the championship, all on the rostrum in this race. Jose Garfias just missing out with Diego Della Torre in 5th position. Ed Pearson promoted to 6th as well with Alessandro Famularo. Everett Stack 3rd across the line, but 8th in the end after that time penalty. Luca Visciaranu and Francisco Soldavini completing the top 10. Paolo Brajnek across the line in 11th place. We lost Kaji Baptista. Here are the championship standings. 4 points the advantage now for Timit Kaharchek, with Yevon David still just behind Michael Shin, but now 15 points behind the championship leader, with 2 meetings and of course 1 more race this weekend still to go. 7 races remaining.
Yeah, and obviously Garfias not too far away either. 38 points back. Will need still some mighty performances though to bring himself closer. Not forgetting as well, folks, we do have drop scores to apply at the very tail end of the season. But a phenomenal Yevon David performance, and one that he very much needed. As I said, it's been a long time since he's tasted 25-point glory. Of course, like I said last time, at Hockenheimring, has been on a good start to the start of the season was a great one. Obviously, the run was phenomenal. He took 2 wins at Portimao, his 3rd win coming at Spa-Francorchamps, his 4th one at Hockenheim. This, of course, being win number 5 here at Red Bull Ring, replacing the wheel back into the chassis. I'm sure he'll now stand himself aloft, and surely, as the bat rises once again, it's Yevon David, a victor once more, this time at Red Bull Ring.
I wonder if he watched back his TED Talk about what he learned from losing, because of course a difficult few months, 3 months since he won in Hockenheim. It's quite astonishing.
Fantastic recovery. Horia Totu coming in to give him a congratulations. And Marco in there as well, of course, writer for FIDE Series, coming in and offering his congratulations.
Michael Shin has another good performance there. I did ask him what he held up. It's a bit of an F1 movie tribute, because of course Brad Pitt keeps a playing card in his pocket, and Michael Shin did the same thing. He wouldn't tell me what card it was, but he did tell me he shuffled up a deck, put one in his pocket, and hopefully that brought him good luck. And I think it's brought him some luck today as well. Second place.
If there's anything valuable when I was growing up as a kid, it was probably a shiny Charizard. And, you know, that was something that was always on the collector's minds back then.
I don't know what kind of poker you've been playing, George.
Well, he breathed fire this time, did Michael Shin in race 1. And I must say it's been a strong weekend for Michael Shin. Once again, obviously with a solid victory performance in race 1, now 2nd place in race 2, some big points in his pocket. Obviously 2nd in the championship as it stands, closing the gap to 4 points to current leader Timit Kaharchek. Incredible performance.
Timit Kaharchek inheriting the podium, but keeping the championship lead, and it's his 2nd rostrum appearance of the weekend. Michael Shin fighting his way up from 6th on the grid up to 2nd, and closing in on the championship lead as well, as was this man, Yevon David, who claims a sensational 5th victory of the season after
Yevon,
a 3-month hiatus.
Welcome back. It has been a tough weekend so far, but now everything all right.
Yeah, what can I say? I mean, we had a tough start to the weekend, but we bounced back today, and that's what matters. It's been a rocky last few rounds, but you know, I've kept my head down, and the team has been pushing really hard, so I'm really thankful for that. And yeah, got a win on Sunday morning, so super happy.
And then there is still Sunday afternoon. How do you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the race is over now, so I'm fully focused on race 3. Obviously happy, but we're going to collect the maximum points possible and fully focused on race 3 and then Barcelona. But definitely super happy and thankful for everyone.
And it's a great fight for the championship, so we are all happy. Well done.
Highlights from race 2 at the Red Bull Ring. Yevon David starting on reverse grid pole, got away very nicely indeed with Everett Stack tucking in behind the Sri Lankan, but it was Timit Kahacek with the lightning start going around the outside to take second place away from Everett Stack from fourth on the grid. An absolutely lightning launch. Contact at the rear of the field between Luca Visharanu and Ricardo Baptista. That put Kaji out of the race. Everett Stack would put up a staunch defence for second place, with Kahacek locking up and losing position to Michael Shin. That was for a podium spot. Shin found his way through into second place, with Stack going wide at the first corner. And Stack would end up losing the podium due to a 5-second time penalty. But Yevon David out in the front of the field, absolutely untroubled. And after 3 months away from the top step of the podium, he finally claims that 5th victory of the season and closes in on the championship lead.
Good job, guys. Good job. Good job. Better
Mega race, awesome. I'm Robert, this one, right?
So to the podium then, Timit Kahacek already being called. And for him, it is a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th appearance on the podium for the championship leader, Michael Shin. Very nearly going onto the top step of the podium. It was like he was an autopilot there. Yevon David on the top step of the podium. Of course, will take the rookie class honours as well. The motor park representative with much enthusiasm for a 1-2 finish for the Oschersleben-based team. And of course, Paolo Brajnik making his customary appearance as the gold class driver. Here's the Sri Lankan national anthem. We saw Yevon's mum in pit lane there as well, very proud of her boy and everything he has accomplished. He's, yeah, not so much a boy, he is very much a very wise head on some young shoulders. They're so refined, these young athletes these days, blow me away.
It's amazing how the professionalism in all sports has progressed, certainly as we've moved into the modern era, especially in motorsport now as well. And some of these drivers that are coming through that are so passionate about what they do, as now Yevon David accepts not just the winning trophy award overall, but also the winning rookie. Once again, he's building up somewhat of a collection of those now over time, and the motorpark representative accepting the trophy from the Pirelli representative as well, winning team again. And this has just been a phenomenal demographic or dynamic here, with now Motorpark BVM really taking the fight to one another. And Giuseppe Mazzotti is going to be looking at this, and I'm sure looking to come back with a bang.
Failed to mention, Michael Shin did actually manage to get the fastest lap
Yes, he
of
did.
the race there right at the end.
So 19 points taken today.
Yes, so that's an extra bonus point he manages to get, but it's 7 races remaining, and those are the 3 drivers who are fighting for the championship. In 10 years' time, are we going to look back on that photo and think there was a future Formula One world champion in that photo? Maybe we will, but for now, it's goodbye from us. We're back at 4:10 for lights out for the final race of the weekend.